let's get started here. Frederick has the book. Thank you, Frederick. I'm glad you dig it. Okay, so really, really important. Time to put your thinking caps on. I hope you have your notebooks handy. So whip out that pen and feel free to screenshot whatever you want. We are also going to send you a link to the replay after this, so you will have access to a replay. I'm going to be moving quickly, so you're welcome to watch this as many times through as you need. And I'm also going to be sending you some of these assets, these slides, and a link to kind of an article that I wrote all about this stuff as a refresher, so you can just reference the article. But I'm going to go through this now. And I see the few people that are already in the queue to be called up to go through your reports later. So we will be getting to you in just a few minutes. Okay, let's get going. Copyrights on a recording. This is really important. This slide might look very simplistic or simple, but this is the most important visual aid that is going to be in your music career. I'm serious. That is not a hyperbole. I want you to think about these colors, these blue and this pink. I want you to be thinking about these whenever you think of royalties, and you're like, wait, what was that? What was that slide that Ari showed me? What was this visual thing? Oh, artist, blue, songwriter, pink. Artist, blue, song. What does this mean? This is so important. Okay, so there are two copyrights on a recording. There is the sound recording copyright. Some people call this the master. That's just a basic recording. Artists record sound recordings. There's also another copyright on a recording. That's called, sometimes people call that the composition or the song. The legal term is the composition when you're registering the copyright. Some people call this the song. Songwriters write songs. They own those composition copyrights. Artists record recordings and release sound recordings. So why is this distinction important? Okay, well, and as most of you probably, we're both. We're everything. We write our own music. We're songwriters and we're artists. We release the songs that we write. Cool. But what happens if you record a cover song? So I see Brianna Falcone is here. What if I record a Brianna song and I release it? I don't automatically now own her composition copyright. I don't own her song just because I decided to record it and release it. She still owns the composition copyright. She still wrote the song. Just because I recorded it and released a cover doesn't mean that I own it. When Jimi Hendrix or Dave Matthews, who I just saw last weekend, phenomenal show, records All Along the Watchtower and releases that recording of All Along the Watchtower, that's still Bob Dylan's song, All Along the Watchtower. Bob Dylan will still own that songwriting copyright just because but Bob Dylan does not own Jimi Hendrix recording or Dave Matthews recording. And Brianna wouldn't own my recording of her song. She owns the composition copyright. I own the master if you record it. So if you're an artist and you record a cover song, let's say you cover one of my songs. I'm a songwriter too. So you're the artist and you record one of my songs. Now, when you release that recording, you own that recording. That is your recording because you recorded it and you release it. And as long as you created all the components to that recording, you didn't use samples. That's another topic we can do a little bit later. As long as you made all the aspects of that recording and you release it, you own that recording. But if it's my song, if I wrote the song, you just covered it, I own the song. I still own the song. Okay. I'm hitting this really hard and I'm explaining it in a bunch of different ways because this is super, super, super important because you won't understand anything else in this presentation if you don't understand this concept. Okay. Okay. Will's getting it. Did Dylan recently sell all of his songwriting copyright? Okay. Yeah. That's a totally, that's a different topic. Yes, you can of course sell. And that brings us to our next point. You can ask organizations or companies or give up or allow them to own or control your your copyrights. So remember that blue circle, pink circle. So record labels typically work with artists and they sign artists and they own or represent the recordings. So when you release that recording, if you work with a record label, they're typically going to own that, or they're going to have the rights to it. They'll license it, that kind of a thing. But traditional record labels, traditional major record deals and indie deals, they typically will own that master recording. So when you say, oh, they're owning my masters, that's what they're talking about. Not your songs. Masters. Remember the difference? Master, song. So publishing. So when people say so that's the master side. When a record label owns or represents, they sign the artist, they release the recordings. That's the blue circle. Record labels, artists, blue circle, master recordings. Now let's hop on over to the composition side. Totally different. This is what people refer to as publishing. Publishing, songwriting, they can kind of be used interchangeably. So, when someone's like, oh, who's getting publishing on this? How much, how are we splitting up the publishing, songwriting? You can literally interchange the words songwriting and publishing. People just like to feel, I think, more important when they say publishing instead of songwriting. I don't know. You can use whatever term you want. It's publishing, it's songwriting, it's the same thing. So songwriters are represented by publishing companies typically. So publishing companies sign songwriters. If publishing companies aren't signing artists who don't write their own songs, they sign songwriters. Now, sometimes those songwriters release records too, of course, and they're artists as well, just like you and I. I'm assuming most people here, just like me, are both songwriters and artists. But you're going to get signed, potentially, if you get signed, you'll get signed as an artist to a record label, because sometimes, I have an artist project called Grassroots District. It's a band. So the band Grassroots District is going to get signed to a record deal, a record label, maybe, actually now we're not going to because we don't want to. But if we wanted to sign with a record label, the band would get signed to a record label, Grassroots District. Grassroots District would not get signed to a publishing company. Bands don't get signed to publishing companies. Songwriters get signed to publishing companies. Songwriters own songs. Songwriters write songs and they register those copyrights. And if they work with a publishing company, sometimes the publishing company will also own part of that song, or they're going to represent it, that whole thing. Does that make sense? So Wayne just asked, what if the label didn't pay for the recording? Why do they still own the master? Okay. Thank you, Mike. Exactly. It absolutely depends on the contract. So it's just because you sign with a record label doesn't mean that they automatically own your firstborn. Sometimes they do put that firstborn child in there that we're going to own as well as all your masters, but sometimes not. So in the record deal, it will say, we own all of your master recordings in perpetuity, which means forever. Sometimes the record deal will say, we're only going to license your recordings for 15 years. So we don't own anything. We're just going to represent them. That's why I wrote up here ownership and representation. Sometimes they own, sometimes they just represent. But sometimes you don't work with a record label or a publishing company. You might be like me. I'm an independent artist. Everything I release is independent. I don't have a record label. So I'm self-released, and that's different. But I'm still the blue circle. Whether I work with a record label or not, it really doesn't matter. This is ownership and representation. So I own my masters. I represent my masters. Some people who work with record labels, the label owns their masters or represents their masters. Some songwriters who work with a publishing company, the publishing company might own or represent their songs, their compositions, whatever you want to call them. Okay, make sense? Cool. Let's go. And Wayne, it really doesn't matter who paid for what. Honestly, it all comes down into the agreement. So if you release the recording, so it's all in the agreements. So, there are typical recordings out there. I know Waylon just asked, during the licensing period, would this so-called record label still receive a huge chunk of revenue or only a percentage outline of the contract? With the master recordings, and we're going to get into this in just a second, with the master sound recordings, there are no laws that say the label gets this amount of money or something like that. Now, there are laws And that's from the streaming revenue. Now, we're going to get into where the laws do come into place. The laws for the master side are in the master performance royalties, which we're going to get into in a second, and we'll talk about that. But when it comes to your deal with the record label, they could take 50% of all the revenue that comes in. They could take 85%. They could take 10%. It's really whatever's in your contract. Now, let's keep going, and then we'll take more questions at the end, because I don't want to go down too many rabbit holes, because I think you're going to get it if we just keep going. Okay, here's an artist royalty flow chart. Now, remember, we're only talking blue circle right now. Blue, artists, sound recording, master. I'm going to have a separate slide for the songwriter royalty flow chart. So this is just that blue circle, artist royalty flow chart. And don't worry, I'm going to send this to everybody. So check your email after this webinar. You'll get this in your email. Okay. So an artist, you make a recording, whether it's your song, somebody else's song, it doesn't matter. You make the recording. We're not talking about who wrote the song right now. All we're talking about is the recording that you released. You make that recording. So you distribute that recording to the streaming services, to the DSPs, if you will. DSP, I know that term gets thrown around a lot. You're like, what does DSP mean? Digital service provider. If you had anyone here, you say like, oh yeah, it's going to the DSPs, DSP. DSP just stands for, it means streaming service. So it's another term for Spotify, Apple Music, all that stuff. So they're all called DSPs. Anyway, moving on. You distribute your song. Doesn't matter which distributor you use, whether you work with DistroKid, TuneCore, Seed Baby, Symphonic, Songwriter, or record label. Doesn't matter. Somebody you work with gets your music onto Spotify and Apple Music and the rest. Deezer, Tidal, all that stuff. So now, once you start to get streams, what happens? Well, let's follow the dollars. Can you guys see the dollar signs there? So it comes from the streaming services, and that money gets paid to your distribution company. So if you used DistroKid and you distributed your recording through DistroKid to all the DSPs, based on how much money they generated from the streams or the downloads, they will send that money back to DistroKid and say, all right, DistroKid, here's all the money that your recording, your artist recording generated, or TuneCore or CD or whomever it is you're using. Or the record label, same thing. If you're represented by Capitol Records, Capitol is going to get the check. It's still going to go to the distributor, and then it's going to go to the label. But then that distributor, because I'm assuming everybody here is independent. But if you do, let's see here. So then they pay the distribution company, and the distribution company pays you. That's where you go log into the back end and you get the streaming royalties. Now, let's look at some of these other things. So you know how I said there's no law for that? Okay, there's no law for that center section, but there is a law. And that is for this section over here, digital radio. We're talking just the US, remember, for this section here. And that's when it comes to sound exchange. So sound exchange, I don't know if you guys can see this. I want you right here, digital radio. See this? Okay. This is where we are right now. Okay. So when SiriusXM plays your recording on the radio, or Pandora plays it on the Pandora radio, or iHeart Radio plays it on anything that's digital radio. We're not talking on the dial. This doesn't count for the dial. If you tune into 89.9, KCRW or whatever, we're not talking about that. We're talking about digital only radio, satellite radio, all that stuff. They do have to pay master performance royalties. And these are these sound recording, we're talking sound recording royalties. And they're also called performance royalties, but not to be confused with the songwriter side. Remember, we're talking artist. I don't want you to forget. What are we talking about? Artist royalties. So sound exchange, that also, and we're going to get into sound exchange in just a second more, but just so you understand, those come from digital radio. Now, in the rest of the world, the royalties are called neighboring rights, and there's neighboring rights organizations. So if you live in Europe, like the UK, that's PPL. If you're in Canada, that's Resound, and that's for performance, master performance royalties when your recordings are played on the radio, in bars, TV, that kind of stuff. Now, notice how I'm using the term recordings and not songs, and I'm saying artists and not songwriters. I'm being very intentional with my word choice right now. Why? Because artists are over here, songwriters are over here, recordings are over here, songs are over here. They're very different. So whereas sometimes you might use them interchangeably, you might say like, oh, artists are, this artist just wrote that song. It's like, okay, as we're talking in conversation, yeah, you might say, yeah, this artist wrote that song, whatever. But today I'm not going to say that. And when you're really talking the legal stuff, you don't say this artist wrote that song. You say this artist recorded that recording and the songwriter wrote that song. Because in contract terms and in how we speak about these things, we differentiate between the artist and the songwriter. They're completely separate entities, and that's just like to understand. So again, we're in the artist royalties flowchart, that blue circle. Here we are. So if you're, some of you are familiar with sync licensing. If your song gets placed on a TV show or a movie or something like that, I'm sorry, my mistake. If your recording gets placed on, we're going to get the songs in just a second. If your recording gets placed on a TV show or a commercial, something like that, they need to get a sync license. And this is called the master use license. And so they need to get this master use license. And either if you're working with a sync licensing company, a sync agent, or a record label, or just you, I mean, when my recording first got on One Tree Hill, I did not have a record label or a sync licensing agent or anything like that. The music supervisor for One Tree Hill, Lindsey Wolfington, came to me directly. It was like, hey, can we put your recording? Can we put this song recording? Because I own both. I wrote the song and I recorded it. So I was able to clear both the sides. And when you say both sides, it means the sound recording side and the composition side, because I wrote both. And I said, yeah. So that's sync. That's the master use. They need to get a license for that, and they'll pay you for that. And then, you might get some residuals if you're singing on the recording and it gets used in a union commercial, but that's a whole other topic and it's very confusing. So we're going to move forward because oh, Jessica, maybe I missed this, but what is the neighboring rights organization called in the US? Right. So it's technically, we don't call them a neighboring rights organization, but it's essentially sound exchange. These neighboring rights are internationally what they're called, but the term here, it's kind of like they're essentially doing the same thing. They're collecting your master, those sound recording performance royalties. Okay. Yes, Jeff, the digital radio, radio's catch-all for the rest of the world. So it's radio, digital, terrestrial, any kind of radio, rest of the world. But I differentiated it because in the US, there's a weird law on the books that says it's only going to collect from digital radio. That's what Sound Exchange does, only collect from digital radio in the US. So that's just a weird, frankly, dumb thing that the US does is Sound Exchange only collects digital radio. Why not regular radio? I don't know. It's stupid. But that's just how it is. So that's why I have to. Alex, do you think they'll ever change? I hope so. Yeah, I mean, that we keep trying to change this. It's like literally the Copyright Office every few years makes a recommendation. They're like, maybe radio, like terrestrial radio, like on the dial, should pay these master royalties like the rest of the world. And then the music industry is like, yes, please. Why aren't you paying us? And then big radio comes in, Clear Channel's like, oh, no, you don't. If you want our money, you're not going to. Politicians, hey, politicians, don't vote for this because big radio, we don't want to have to pay these royalties. So that's the political fight. Anyway, so I don't know. Amy, which organization collects dial radios for US? Okay, do you see? Let me show you right here. Good question. Great questions, people. See this guy right here? If you're signed up with Sound Exchange, you'll get your international royalties from these other organizations. Sound Exchange has relationships with all the international neighboring arts organizations. So if you're in the US and you sign up with Sound Exchange, they will collect from all these other ones. Tadia, so who in the US, what company collects from regular radio plays? No company. You don't earn any royalties. That's that dumb law that's on the books. Exactly. It's stupid. Shouldn't we get our royalties? Yes, we should, but we don't. Okay. Moving on. So terrestrial radio just doesn't pay in the US, Jessica. Terrestrial radio does not pay royalties to artists and record labels. Those master royalties. If your recording gets played on the radio, let's say it gets every radio station in the United States is playing your recording. If you did not write that song, you will receive 0 royalties on that. However, if they stream it or it gets played, if it's on, obviously you'll get the money from Spotify or Pandora or any of that stuff. But if your recording is played on terrestrial radio, no, you're not going to get those royalties in the United States. That's a dumb law. Let's work on changing it. Okay, Diane, thank you for transitioning me into the next slide. Oh, actually, in just a couple seconds. So I'm going to get to BMI in just a second. We're still, just so you know, Diane, and everybody else, we are still on this blue circle. Blue circle. Artists, these are just master royalties. We're going to get to BMI in a second. That's on the pink circle. But we're on blue circle right now. Blue circle. Master recordings. The organizations you need to register to collect your sound recording royalties are your distributor. So, DistroKid, TuneCore, CD Baby, Songwriter, Symphonic, Amuse, whatever distributor you use. I actually compared 16 or 17 of the independent distributors out there. We'll pop the link in the chat. Alexis or Tamika can pop that link in the chat. And you can choose a distributor to distribute your music. Okay. The other organization is Sound Exchange. Again, this is to collect your digital radio royalties. Now, let's talk about Sound Exchange for a second. This is Sound Exchange, soundexchange.com. If you are your own, if you don't have a record label, you go to soundexchange.com and you select both. And you say, I'm both the performer and the sound recording copyright owner, because you own your recording. You don't have a record label that owns your recording. And so you ask them to pay you all the money. Because how it works is Sound Exchange splits up the money. They pay about half to the label and half to the artist. They actually pay a little bit to backup musicians, but that's another topic for another call. So yes, session musicians also get paid from Sound Exchange. They're called non-featured artists, the non-performers. So if you're a session musician, if you played guitar or drums on somebody else's track, you're technically entitled to 5% of every recording from digital radio. And you can get that money by going to the fund. So it is, I actually wrote an article on this. It was calling out the fund because they were not actually paying out all their money. That's a whole other topic. But if you're a backup musician, you don't get this money from Sound Exchange. You get it from the fund. And Alexa, if you want to pop that link in there too. Jen asked, do they pay retroactively? Yes, all these organizations hold on to your money for at least 3 years or so. And then so you want to get on this soon, because if you don't grab your money soon enough, they will just pay it out by market share to everybody else. Okay, moving on. We're on the pink circle now, the Songwriter royalties flowchart. Now, no confusion here. This chart is only US. So this is just the US, how Songwriter royalties work, composition royalties in the United States, because it works slightly different everywhere else. And I don't have time today to cover every country, but we're just going to cover the United States Songwriter royalties, how this works if you're in the States. So you write a composition, you're a songwriter. Again, we're going back to, it's going to take me a second to get back here, but just so you know, we're talking Pink Circle now. Pink Circle, composition, song, songwriters, publishers, Pink Circle. Okay, so back to Songwriter Royalties flowchart. You write a song and it gets on a streaming service. So whether somebody covers your song and releases it, their recording, or you record your own song and release it, it gets to that streaming service. Now, if it's being streamed on Spotify, there are two, count them, two streams of royalties for songwriters. Publishing, royalties, whatever you want to call them. Remember, publishing, songwriter, same term. Publishing, songwriter, songwriter, publishing. Same kind of thing. So songwriter royalties, publishing royalties, whatever you want to call it. There are two kinds of publishing royalties, songwriter royalties, that come from stream services. Can anybody tell me what those are? Look at this flow chart. It's, all right, I'll give you a hint. They're in the light gray here. You can see light gray. Light gray. Yes? Anyone? Come on, Bueller. You're in there somewhere. Two kinds of publishing royalties that come from streams. Who's going to get this? I'm going to give you a cookie. Come on. You're going to get a... Yes, Haiti Mechanical is one. And performance. Haiti, you win the cookie. Somebody give Haiti a digital cookie. Thank you, Haiti. Mechanical and performance. Fantastic. These are the two kinds of publishing royalties. Oh, y'all get it. Okay, cool. Thank you. Now, how do you get these performance and mechanical royalties? How do you get them? Good question. Well, look at this chart here. So I'm going to highlight this. So performance royalties are over here. Now, these come from when your song's streamed, but also when your songs get played. These are performance royalties. So it's get performed in public on radio, TV, bar, clubs. Even if you play your song live, or if somebody plays your song live, you can get performance royalties from that. And these are ASCAP, BMI, CSAC, Global Music Rights in the United States. Now, most countries around the world have their own performing rights organization. We have 4 in the States for songwriters, 4 of the big ones, and then there's some other carve-out things, but not going to get into that. Most people, I'm assuming. And now I'm curious. I'm going to run a quick poll of the performing rights organizations. Tell me which one you're registered with. ASCAP, BMI, here we go. I'm going to pop a poll here. You don't have to type it. You can just select the poll. Which PRO are you registered with? ASCAP, BMI, CSAC. Okay, we have some people from Canada here, SOCAN. Or if you're not registered, that's cool too. So you're either in, if you're in the States, are you registered with ASCAP? Are you registered with BMI? Are you registered with CSAC? Or none? Or other, if you're in a different country, and I didn't list your PRO here. Okay, so we have a couple of people from Canada. Yeah, that's kind of what I would expect. It's split pretty... Oh, more people are selecting this poll here. All right, who's going to win? Oh, man. All right, I'm going to end it. Oh, look at that. Exactly split. 42% ASCAP, 42% BMI, and then the rest are, we have 2% CSAC. We have got a few people from SOCAN, from Canada here of SOCAN. And then there's 7%. There's some of you who are not registered with a PRO. We're going to get to that. You need to be. So now another poll I have for you, so that's performance royalties. Those are those two kind. Now let's talk the other kind, mechanical royalties. Now in the United States, here's where you got to pay attention because this changed this year. What year did this change? This year. This year, this changed. Listen closely, the only organization in the United States that is collecting mechanical royalties. And mechanical royalties, where they come from? Hello. Dollars, royalties from the streaming service, from the DSPs. The only organization in America that collects mechanical royalties is called, drumroll please, the MLC. The MLC is, I'm going to hit this really hard because someone's going to ask me, well, what about Harry Fox? And what about Wait a minute. What about music reports? Not. The MLC. Thank you, Jai. Yes, Frederick. MLC. Great. I'm glad that some of you know this. The only organization that collects mechanical royalties in the States is the MLC. Now, this just changed the beginning of this year, January 2021, the MLC formed. So previously, there were other organizations. There was Harry Fox, there was Music Reports, there was, it was complicated. But now there's only one organization. This is set up by Congress. This is from a law that was passed, the Music Modernization Act that was passed in 2018. They designated this organization, the MLC, to be the only organization to collect mechanical royalties. So I want to know, let me know, are you registered with the MLC? Take this poll. You personally, like, did you go to the MLC.com and did you register? Say like, yeah, I'm registered. If you don't know what it is or you didn't do it, then your answer is probably no, or I don't know. So how many of you have actually gone to the MLC.com and registered your stuff? Not your songs are there, but you actually went and registered. Okay. That's kind of what I thought. 73% of you are not registered. 4% of you, I don't know. 4%, you're signed with a publishing company and your publisher is. And 18% of you are registered. Okay. So now I actually want to know. Here's another question. Do you have a publishing company? Are you signed with a publishing company? Yes, a major. Yes, as an independent publisher. Independent does not mean CD Baby, TuneCore, Centric, or Songtrust. That's the one neck down below, an admin publisher. That's different. So, and then not, this is where it's going to get a little confusing. We're not talking vanity publishers either. So we're not talking the one that you wrote into ASCAP or BMI and you said, oh, this is what my publishing company is called. No. We're talking like there's a full-on admin publishing entity that's going around and collecting your royalties from every organization around the world. If you don't do that, then your vanity publishing company doesn't count here. So, yeah, change that answer if that's so. It's an actual, like, we're talking independent publishing companies, like you're signed to Cobalt or something like that, or you're signed, Concord or whatever. All right. So that's what I thought. We got 58% are self-administered songwriters. 23% have an admin publishing company. 16% are signed with indie publishers. And then we have 1% signed to major publishers. That's what I thought. Okay. So so for those 58% of you, you got some work to do because here we go. The organizations that you need to register to collect your publishing royalties, you have to be registered with a performing rights organization, PRO. In the States, ASCAP, BMI, and CSAC. So for all those people before that were not registered with ASCAP, BMI, or CSAC, and you're a songwriter in the States, you have to register with them. Now, even if you have a publishing company, you still have to register with them because these PROs, they pay out 50% of the money to your publishing company and 50% of the money to you, the songwriter, directly. That's just how they work. Now, the MLC is different. The MLC, they don't do the 50-50 split. They don't pay out 50% to the songwriter, 50% to the publisher. The MLC, they're paying out all of the mechanical royalties to whoever they can find that represents that those mechanical royalties. So if you're a self-administered songwriter, so those 60% of you, you got to go to the MLC.com and you have to sign up with the MLC. Otherwise, you're not going to get your mechanical royalties. So the MLC.com, sign up for your mechanical royalties. Now, I interviewed the head of the CEO of the MLC, Chris, on the podcast. I encourage you to listen to this episode. We'll also link that episode, an article that I wrote on it in the chat. PT has a great question. So don't sign with the MLC if you have a PRO. Incorrect. PRO does not stand for publishing company. PRO stands for Performing Rights Organization. So if you are with ASCAP, and you don't have a publishing company, you have to sign up with the MLC. Because remember, let's go back to the slide here. ASCAP, BMI, CSAC, they represent performance royalties. But what are the two kinds of songwriter royalties? Ladies and gentlemen, what are the two kinds of publishing royalties? Performance. Who collects performance royalties? Performing rights organizations. PRO. Performing rights organizations. Who are they? ASCAP, BMI, CSAC. But what's the other kind of royalty? Publishing royalty, songwriter royalty, mechanical royalties. Who collects mechanical royalties? The MLC. Totally different. MLC collects mechanical royalties. Now, why do I say here, this is where you're confused. Why do you say, but if you don't have a publishing company? Okay, because if you have a publishing company, your publishing company has a relationship with the MLC, and the MLC will pay out the publishing company, and your publishing company will pay you. But the 60% of you here that are not signed to a publisher and you don't have an admin publisher, you have to go to the MLC.com and sign up. So what I want to do now is I want to actually show you how you can check to see if you are getting paid from the MLC. And then I'm going to bring in Lindsey, who she's from the MLC, and she's going to help everybody explain this. Now, if we have some volunteers here who want to come up and show their backend. So all my volunteers, this is where I want you to go. So get this page pulled up so we can start to do this together. But I'm going to show you what I'm doing here. So you're going to go to the MLC.com, and I'm going to do this with you. Ready? The MLC.com. Now, I want you to go to the public search right here. And now you can either type in a title of your song, or you can search by writer name. Let's search. Now, it's important. We're going to do this both ways. So we'll search by my writer name, my full name there. I have 87 titles. This is how you're going to do this. So you're going to pull this up, and let's pull up a song that I co-wrote off my latest album. The song is called Drifting. As you can see, there's two writers here, me, and I wrote it with Ruben. Now, here's where we're running into an issue. So Proud Honeybee Music, that's my vanity publishing company. That's what I registered with ASCAP before I was working with an admin publisher. ASCAP requires you to put an admin vanity publisher in there, just something so they'll pay. Remember how ASCAP pays 50-50. So this is me. This is just me. It's just I kind of came up with this word. It's not a real company. It's just a name of one. Anyway, the administrator is Songtrust. So I have a relationship with Songtrust. Songtrust is my administrator. So Ruben, though, he doesn't have a publisher or administrator. So Ruben is not getting his mechanical royalties. So Ruben, if you're on, you got to go register with the MLC. Otherwise, you're not going to get your mechanical royalties. If you're not here, I'll have to just text Ruben and be like, yo, MLC.com, do this. Now, here's another issue that I found. Check this out, work title. So I have a song called These Feet Ain't Got No Body. This is my Grassroots District song. So here's the song, These Feet Ain't Got No Body. As you can see, two writers, Brett and me. However, as you can see, my name is not correct here. This is my artist. This is not Ari Herstand, which is my writer name. Now, Brett is also administered by Songtrust, but the only one I can tell, because it's his vanity publishing company and Songtrust, I'm not getting my mechanical royalties here. So, I have to go take it up with Songtrust now and be like, yo, Songtrust, why aren't I getting it? So for literally everybody here, whether you have a publisher, whether you have an admin publisher, or you're self-administered, go here right now. Go to the MLC.com and search your songs. Because look at this. I have an administrator. You'd expect them to have this stuff done, but they don't. And I'm telling you, every publisher in the world, none of this is going to be perfect. So this is how you're going to want to do this. And this is Got No Body. You can see the artist is here. Yeah. So anyway, okay. So I want to bring in some volunteers, and I'm going to bring Lindsey up, and she's going to step you through this and help everyone out. So Lindsey, do me a favor, raise your hand to speak too, so I can bring you up first. And if that doesn't work, I'll invite you as a presenter too, like we did in the test. But here, let me see if this works, Lindsey. And if not, you can check the link from your email. But here we go. Fingers crossed it works. Okay, just in case, we'll see. Invite. And then I'm also going to bring up our volunteers too. But oh, yes, Lindsey's here. Woo! It worked. Lindsey.
How's it going?
Good. How'd I do so far?
Did great.
Okay. So let's bring up some of the volunteers, and you can kind of help them go through their stuff.
Sure.
So Brianna, you've been waiting so patiently since the very beginning. Let's. Oh, and I do want people to know. I should have mentioned that to Brianna before I accepted her. So Kevin, Amy, Wake, Jessica, you're going to have to approve something. You're going to have to go through some tests here and say, yes, I want to, test your audio, test your video. And that's the only way that you're going to get in here. So it's not Zoom. It's a little bit different and more complicated. So Kevin, Amy, Wake, Jessica. I don't know if Brianna got that. Maybe she'll come back in. We'll get to her later. But Kevin, I'm going to bring you up. So get ready to approve your stuff. And then we can go through Kevin's stuff. And if anyone else here wants to come up, you can check the raise your hand to speak button there. Jesus Rodriguez, Song Trust is slowly losing my trust for sure. Yeah. You know what? Hold their feet to the fire. I do it all the time. As soon as I noticed this, I went to Song Trust. I'm like, yo, why aren't you collecting why did songs slip through the cracks? And they're like, oh, let's get on this. Because here's the thing, though. It's not just the Song Trust thing. It's honestly every publisher, every admin publisher out there. None of these reports are so complicated and so challenging. Nothing is going to be perfect out there. So let's see whatever. So Kevin, how's it going? Can you hear us?
I can hear you very well. Can you hear me?
Fantastic. Yes.
Excellent.
So Kevin, do you want to go through the songs registered in the MLC and see if you're getting your money?
Yeah. So I actually, while you were talking, I went over to that and checked it. And the only song that's showing up is one that got chosen from a music library. For some reason, I have 30 songs to my pro, and the only one showing up is one chosen.
So Lindsey, what does he do?
Yeah, Kevin, it sounds like, you said you registered your works for your PRO. Is that what I heard you say?
Correct.
Okay, so the PRO data won't transfer over to the MLC automatically. So it sounds like you need to sign up to become a member, and then you can register your works that way. And we've got a few options for you. You can choose to do it individually. If that's your jam, you'd rather go through and do it one by one, we can do that. Or we have a bulk work template. You download the template. You can do I think you said you had 30. You can do all 30 at the same time. So it just kind of depends on what you'd prefer to do. But step one is becoming a member.
Step one, become a member. Perfect.
Yes.
I can do that. Thank you.
And how do you become a member, Lindsey? Let us know again.
Yeah, go to the MLC.com, click Connect to Collect. You will have to sign up to become a user first. So put in all your personal information. And then once you have a user account, then you'll sign up to become a member. It's right in the front. So
Beautiful.
You can't miss it.
Awesome.
Wonderful.
Cool.
Thank you.
Of course.
And Kevin, I'm actually, so when you're looking at that, if you want, you can share your screen real quick. And so we can see what you're looking at. Cause I'm curious, even though the song's registered like mine was, I wonder if you're actually getting paid from it. Because if you don't have an administrator or a publisher and you're not signed up for the MLC, I'm curious to see what it looks like.
Yeah, I'd love to. Let me see. I'm not the most technologically.
Oh, you know what? Just tell me your songwriter name and I'll pull it up for you.
Kevin Seary, S as in Sam, E-R-E-Y.
Kevin S-E-A-R-Y. All right, let's pull this up here.
And then it'll probably be Kevin Thomas series, what it said.
Gotcha. Okay. Serey. Oh, here we go. Okay. Found it. All right. I see these here. I'm going to share my screen so you guys can see what we're looking at here. Here we go. Okay. Is this what you're seeing there?
Correct. Yeah.
All right. So, Mechanical Copyright Protection Society. So, Lindsey, do you know anything about this?
Can you, so yeah, it looks like do you have a relationship with Mechanical Copyright Protection Society, Kevin?
No, I'm not exactly sure.
Or do you recognize, or the other one, Pop-Up Music Publishing? Do you
Correct. That's the library that chose my song for sync.
Okay. So it sounds like, Kevin, you may need to, for this particular work, you may need to contact our support team and perhaps start a process to retain the control of this work. It's wherever this may have come over from some other relationship, but it sounds like the ownership isn't quite right. So we'll get set up first as a member, and then reach out to our support team for this work, and they can help facilitate the process to get this situated.
We'll definitely do that. Thank you.
Of course.
Awesome. All right. Thanks, Kevin.
Thank you.
I want to pop you back in the chat. Okay. Amy. So get ready, Amy. Make sure you accept all the prompts. And then Wake and Jessica.
While we're waiting for her to join, I just want to, a common thing, if you're finding your works in the public database and you're saying, hey, wait a minute, I don't have a member and the shares are there, don't panic. When you become a member, we'll be able to then associate those works to your member account. So you still sign up, and then when you sign up, you'll see those works will be in your account at that time. So for anybody who was wondering, how do I get those works into my catalog? We'll do it for you.
That's a really, thank you for that. And Kayla, also from the MLC, wrote in the chat, the MLC membership is free. Yes, it's free. I know some of the other PROs charge you for membership. The MLC is totally free. And actually something really cool about the MLC, and this is part of the law, is that the MLC doesn't actually take a commission. So ASCAP, BMI, all the others, they take a commission. It's like around 11, 12%, something like that. They take a commission off the top. So when Spotify pays ASCAP and they're like, hey, here's all the performance royalties, ASCAP takes off about 12% and then pays out the money. When Spotify pays the MLC, hey, MLC, here's your mechanical royalties. The MLC literally doesn't take a dime from that. They pass on 100% of the money to the publisher or whoever's registered. So whether it's you, the songwriter, or the publisher. And that's because, so now you're probably wondering, well, how do they make money? Who's paying for all this? Part of the law was that the streaming services, the DSPs, actually have to pay all the costs. So that was part of the law. That was this deal that got worked out. So that's Spotify, that's Apple, that's Amazon, that's Google, that's all of them are literally paying for all these costs, not out of your royalties, mind you, either. So they're not skimming off the top either. They're literally just having to pay them. Amy, hello, are you there? It's a little crazy. Okay. Very staticky. Amy, I'm going to kick you out. Sorry. Okay, that didn't work. Wake, you're up next, so get ready. And Jessica, Michael, James, you're on deck here. So get ready. When I accept you, you're going to have to approve the audio. You're going to have to go through a few steps to test out your audio and video. Hannah's wondering, or Hannah, if you'll be signing up for Songtrust for admin publishing, should I wait to finalize that before signing up to the MLC?
Yeah, because if you if you're entering into a publishing administration deal with Songtrust, they're going to do everything on your behalf. So you won't actually need to register for the MLC. So I would get that and let them do all the work.
Mm-hmm. So Jared is wondering, he's in Canada. How does this all work for Canadian songwriters?
Sure. So if you are, so we will pay out international songwriters and publishers, but they're for usages in the US. So however, it's a lot of international songwriters or publishers are collecting from a foreign CMO. So it just kind of depends.
Stands for
The collective rights management organizations or collective management organizations.
So you call them CMOs, but give me some examples. What is a CMO?
Yeah. So one CMO is SOCAN, I believe, is a CMO. PRS is a CMO. And a lot of publishers will they'll let the CMOs collect on their behalf, and then the CMOs will pay the publishers. So if you're affiliated with that CMO and then they're collecting on your behalf. You don't necessarily have to do that. You can collect your own US digital audio mechanicals by signing up for the MLC. It's just really important to know that the only market that we're paying out for is the US market. So if it streams in the US, then that's what you're getting paid on. If it streams in the UK, we're not paying you for that. So just want to make sure that's
right.
clear.
So this is a really good point. That, and I've had these conversations with a few of my songwriter friends. They're like, should I pay the $100 sign up fee for Songtrust, or should I just sign up for the MLC for free and sign up for ASCAP and do that, or BMI? If you sign up for the MLC and you sign up with a PRO like ASCAP or BMI, you're getting all your performance royalties, you're getting your US mechanic royalties. But let's say you're huge in Brazil, and let's say you're getting gazillions of streams in Brazil. Just because you're with the MLC, you're not getting those mechanical royalties, correct?
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
You'll have to collect them however you have to collect them in that region.
Right, which would be from an admin publisher like a Songtrust or a Centric or a TuneCore Publishing. Or something like that. TuneCore Publishing operates essentially the same way as Songtrust. TuneCore is actually only $75, so you can price that out yourself. Okay, let's bring up someone else. Brianna, there she is. She does have a question, but I'm registered with an admin publishing company, but I don't see any of my songs on the MLC website. Would I need to talk to the MLC about that? So, Brianna, is that your songwriter name, Brianna Falcone? Let's look this up. I'll pull it up here and we can do it. Let me make sure here. That's not. Tell me your songwriter name so I can look that up, Brianna. So yeah, it doesn't show that any of your, unless I'm doing this incorrectly, but let me, and did you see your songs there? This is what I'm seeing. I typed that in there and I see under writer name, I see nothing. So I don't know. Let's do your last name. There might be a lot of those. Okay.
So if you do have while this tries to load, if you do have a publishing administration deal, whether that be by way of a CD Baby Pro, or perhaps you have a publisher or an administrator, and you're seeing mistakes in the database, for example, your works aren't there, or perhaps your songwriter IPI is incorrect or something like that, you need to reach out to that company, that entity, and tell them, hey, here's the mistakes you need to fix. You're paying them, so they have a job to do, and we have to, when we edit works or when work edits are submitted, it has to be in order to be accepted, it has to be submitted by the entity that has the rights to that.
Yeah, that's a great point. And there's a good question here from Anna. CD Baby is my distributor. Should I sign with the MLC? So here's where it gets confusing when we're talking CD Baby and TuneCore, because there's, remember our blue circle and our pink circle? Well, CD Baby and TuneCore, they essentially have two completely separate businesses, but it's all under their umbrella. So CD Baby distribution is the blue circle. And if you just use them for distribution, and you don't have anyone collecting that pink circle, collecting your publishing royalties, then that's on you. Whether you want to do an admin publisher, whether you want to go directly to the MLC and sign up. However, CD Baby also has what's called CD Baby Pro publishing that you can opt into. That then they will collect your pink circle and they will be your publisher, your admin publisher, your administrator. So like Lindsey was just saying, if there are errors and you use CD Baby Pro publishing, that you actually have to opt into that. It's totally separate from distribution. Then you would go to CD Baby and say, hey, my stuff's incorrect. And then CD Baby would have to come to the MLC and fix that. And yes, for those of you who want to get more into insider baseball, Will said Songtrust also does this work for CD Baby Pro option. Yes, Songtrust actually is the one powering the back end of CD Baby publishing, and Centric is the one powering the back end of TuneCore publishing, because TuneCore does the same stuff too. Okay, I'm going to bring up Jessica, and then we'll get to Michael, and then I'm going to let Lindsey go because we've gone over just a little bit, and I know people are probably pinging her right now, being like, where are you? Why aren't you on this meeting? Sorry. Okay. And so Wake's question was, I'm signing up for the MLC, and I'm a songwriter, but we also just started a publishing company that we registered with ASCAP as well. When I answered, do you have a publisher, administrator, CMO, or digital distribution service collecting U.S. digital audio mechanical royalties on your behalf? What do I answer? Great question.
Yeah, that's a good question. So it sounds like if you started the publishing company, it sounds like you started that to represent your own works. So in that scenario, it actually doesn't matter. So what we're doing in this line of questioning for becoming a member is trying to prevent people from signing up who actually don't need to. So if you were to select that if I were you, I would just select that you're a self-administered songwriter if you started that publishing company to represent yourself, and then sign up using that publishing entity name. Because that's just the most streamlined way to get to your membership. But so technically you're representing yourself, you're a self-administered songwriter, you're just operating under a publishing entity, or perhaps you did an LLC. Either way, that question's more for like, are you signed with Cobalt or something like that? Or do you have an publishing administration deal with Songtrust? Hopefully that cleared it up a little bit, but if you do need help, getting through that member sign up process, support team can help you. They'll be able to walk you through it.
And Wake, that's like when I was saying that thing that was registered as my publisher, Proud Honeybee Music. That's what we call a vanity publishing. Vanity because it's not a real publishing company that's going around collecting royalties. It's just a name that ASCAP asks you to put in there. So if you don't actually have a publishing company, then like Lindsey said, you're self-administered, and that's what you select. Jessica, hello, what's up?
Hi, good. Nothing. I mean, I don't know.
So what's your question?
Well, I had the same question as I think it was Brianna, where I have a lot of songs registered and my name is just nowhere to be found on the MLC. So,
Okay, so you are the songwriter. Do you also have publishing rights to those works?
Yes, but I was living in, I'm Canadian citizen. I just moved to the States this year, but I started in Canada. So I don't know if that's an problem, but you were talking about the CMOs. Is that correct?
Yes.
So I just checked and I found out that CMRA is one of those in Canada, which I am a part of, and I've collected royalties from them. So I just wonder if that's where my royalties are.
Perhaps, without knowing the details of the deal that you have with that organization, it's hard for me to really provide guidance. So where you physically live doesn't really matter in this scenario. It's where your work's being used, or where are they playing.
Okay.
So if you were collecting digital audio mechanicals through, I think you said, which
CMRRA.
CMRRA.
And SOCAN.
Okay. So if you were previously collecting digital audio mechanicals through one of those organizations, you're likely still collecting from them. But I would check with them and understand the deal that you have with them. And if you haven't received money, definitely reach out to them and say, where's my money? Now, if it's a situation where they're not collecting on your behalf anymore, maybe they're not registering your works, whatever, the deal isn't there anymore, you'll then create a member in the MLC portal. And if you have to claim your share to the works that already exist, you can do that in the portal. So it kind of just depends on what the situation is. I hope
so.
Yes,
it does. Thank
okay.
you. Are you saying so? The deal depends on the deal that I have with them. So are you saying it's possible that the deal that I have with them is for them to collect my MLC royalties?
It's possible.
Okay.
It's also possible that they're not.
Well, if even if your deal is that they should collect your MLC, your mechanicals, your US mechanicals, which all will be filtered through the MLC, your songwriter name should still be showing up in the MLC, right, Lindsey?
Yeah, if the works are registered correctly,
Right.
the songwriter name should be there. So if it's not,
then CMMRA just is not communicating with the MLC. They maybe they didn't send in their catalog to the MLC, or maybe they didn't send in your songs, right?
that there's a lot of scenarios at play here. It could be, what we had come into it. It just hasn't been updated. It could be that, they haven't submitted a CWR file. That's just a way that large organizations can register a lot of works at the same time. It could be that it's just not registered correctly. So, there's a lot.
Just because that my name is not anywhere to be found on the MLC doesn't mean that I don't necessarily have royalties.
Correct.
Does that make sense? Okay.
Yeah, it's just a matter of cleaning up the data, one, so that we know who we're supposed to pay. And also keep in mind, unlike the PROs, there's the writer share and the publisher share. In our world, there's the publisher share. So we pay the publisher or the administrator, the entity that owns the rights to the work, and then they pay whoever. So if you're a self-administered songwriter, that's you. If you're a writer that is administered by a song trust or whatever, then that's song trust and they pay you.
Okay.
So it could, there's just, as you can see, it can get pretty complicated. So there could be a lot of reasons, and happy to go through and see what's there and see if you recognize anything, but it sounds like you don't see your information anywhere. So
yeah, I don't. And I'm not registered with Song Trust or CD Baby Pro or an admin at all. So
it might
do.
So first,
what you said.
Step one, check with those organizations and see what's going on. If they're not collecting anything and they're not registering your works and they're not doing anything with it, then step two is become a member and claim your share to those works. And then you can edit those works directly. You can add your songwriter and your publisher on there and claim the share that you have. There will be a percentage of total known shares. So you'll probably have a percentage that's available to claim, essentially, and you can claim those, and then the works get registered. Any money that has been collected for usage as of January 1 will be paid retroactively. Anything that landed in the unclaimed or the historic unmatched, we're still working through that process. Coming soon.
Okay, so there is still backdated royalties before this came into place this year. January 1st.
Yeah, if it's in the unmatched, there is. Sorry,
go ahead.
Cool. Yeah. It was a lot of it's $424 million that we collected, along with lots of data. So we're still kind of combing through that data and figuring out what our game plan is to pay the proper people those monies.
And we only have 3-4 years for people to actually claim their money. Is that right?
Yes, it's 3 years, but it could go to 5 years. If we feel like we can take a little bit more time to properly match the money to the person, we will take more time but total after 5 years, it goes to market share.
So go make sure your stuff are registered now, because if you don't do this in 3 years, you lose all your money.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Jessica.
Thanks so much, Ari. Thanks.
Yeah. Michael, hello.
Hey, Ari. Hey, Lindsey. Thanks so much for talking to us today.
Of course.
My problem, I think, will be quick. I'm going to turn my screen on.
Cool.
Oh, can you see?
Yes.
The MLC. So I have a song on here, and I registered it when I first heard about the MLC. Everything looks good except the recordings.
Mm-hmm.
There are 2 recordings. They have the same ISRC, same artist, same duration, same release date. And that kind of thing just like melts my brain. So when I saw that, I got very confused.
Sure.
Is there something I actually need to do about this, or?
No. No, we are working. This is part of an ongoing cleanup exercise. We are working on cleaning up the recording data. Another thing to know coming soon, which will actually be far more valuable than what you're looking at here, is we are going to be posting the DSP recording data in the portal with your work. So you'll actually be able to see what the DSPs are reporting to us just right in your work registration. So I wouldn't worry about that. I know it's messy. I promise we're working on cleaning it up.
Cool. Awesome. Thanks for the reassurance. Appreciate it.
Of course.
Awesome. Great question from Marciano here. Our contract with Sony ATV has ended, but they are still listed as administrators at the MLC. What do they do?
Yeah, so this is pretty common. When you've had a relationship with a publisher in the past and it ended for whatever reason, publishers are historically slow to relinquish. Relinquish means that they release the rights back to you. So what I would do is one, you can reach out to Sony and say, hey, looks like you haven't relinquished these works yet. You need to do that. If they don't respond in a timely manner, or they say, no, you're wrong, then you can file, or you can start what we call the disputes process. So you would reach out to our support team. They'll facilitate the process. And basically what we do is we would then reach out to Sony and ask for that relinquishment and say, so-and-so has reported that there is a transfer of ownership. It may require us to get some, what they'll likely do is, the technicality doesn't matter. So I don't want to get too in the weeds about it, but we'll start that process for you. And then Sony will say, yep, we're good. The ownership should go back to whoever, but typically we're able to sometimes get a relinquishment faster. So if you first try Sony, see if you can get it yourself. If not, reach out to us. We'll reach out to them and we'll get it situated.
Awesome. Yeah, Jared is asking, how does everyone stay accountable? Is there some kind of database that tracks all the times a work has been played that is independent of the companies collecting and paying out?
It's a really good question. Accountability has been a challenge in this industry. So one great thing about the MLC is that this is a public database. So as a self-administered songwriter, or just a songwriter in general, we're giving you the visibility to check your data. So what's there is what, like, the DSPs, like everybody can see it. So before, there wasn't that kind of visibility. So this is probably the closest thing of what you're talking about. And that's a great way to at least hold the parties that you're working with accountable, and being able to make sure that your information is correct.
Awesome. All right, last question. We've gone over quite a bit, but we're going to cap it here. James, what's going on?
Hey, man. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep. Dude, super happy to be here. Thanks so much for taking the time. So I'm a songwriter, love writing music. I found some of my works on the MLC, and all of my works are listed. It says I have 4 titles, which is great. And I've been getting paid out every once in a while through TuneCore. And I just this last year registered with Song Trust, and I'm just noticing that nothing's really coming through Song Trust. I have 0 total earnings. And I was just curious if what part of, like, the signal chain I should check to, like, make sure that something's being processed, or should I just bail entirely and go to the MLC?
Well, so if you're wondering if you need, like, I would ask Song Trust for, like, your statement or your activity, and see. There's a couple of reasons why you may not have been paid. One might be that it was below the threshold, so the streams there haven't been enough streams that earn enough revenue to be paid out. But I would ask you said Song Trust, I think,
I did.
that to ask them for a report of your activity and to understand that.
And another thing is the distributors. So I'm assuming you're using TuneCore as your distributor, not TuneCore Publishing. That's correct, right?
I believe so. Yes.
Okay. You can't actually be with both TuneCore Publishing and Songtrust because they both would be doing the same thing for the same songs. So you have to, I'm assuming you use TuneCore distribution and then you went to Songtrust for publishing admin, that's okay. But you also want to double check on that because if you register with TuneCore Publishing and Songtrust, they're going to be conflicting. So then TuneCore will have registered all your songs. Songtrust is going to go in there and they're going to be confused. They're like, wait a minute, it says that TuneCore's, you can only have one publisher for the song. So that could also be it. So double check with TuneCore that you've only done distribution and not publishing. If you've done publishing, then stick with TuneCore and just go to Songtrust and be like, never mind, please delete my account. Now, the third option, the reason that you're not getting any money is that distributors pay a lot quicker typically because when the DSPs pass money on to the distributor will turn that money around 30, 60 days. When the DSPs pass money on to the MLC or to ASCAP, it takes them a while to calculate and crunch, and then they have to pay out Songtrust or publishing or whomever your publisher is, and then they take a while to crunch and do that. So it's way delayed, so much longer delayed. We're talking probably 9 months to a year from that stream versus with your distributor, it's going to be like 2-3 months from the stream, right?
Gotcha. Yeah, because that kind of makes sense because I'm getting stuff from TuneCore and it comes in pretty quickly, just sort of trickling in. But yeah, thanks, man.
Cool. Awesome. Well, Lindsey, thank you so much for coming on and spending the time with us and the extra time with us. Thank you, everyone who tuned in live, everyone who's watching the replay. Thank you for coming and spending this hour plus with us. It's a very complicated topic, but I'm happy that we could break this down for you. I'm going to put a link in this follow-up email that you're going to get, also in the description and also in the chat right now. A link to an article I wrote on the MLC, breaking it all down, explaining this a lot further, and my conversation with Chris, the head of the MLC right now. And I'm also going to put another article I wrote breaking down just all royalties, kind of summing up our conversation today, everything we talked about, which discusses that all there. So great. All right. Thanks so much, everyone. Have a wonderful day. Take care.